We've got the initial configuration on our switch. Now it's time to lock it down. I want to show you something. If you are following these in order, in the last video we set up our switch for Telnet to where we gave it an IP address on the VLAN 1 interface. We did no shutdown to power it up, so it now has an IP address and we should be able to Telnet to it. So I'm going to do that. Telnet 172.30.2.180. That was the IP address that we gave the switch. Now keep in mind, before I hit enter, we did not give it any passwords. We did not touch passwords in the previous video. So I'm going to hit enter. It comes up and says password required but none set, then connection to host lost. So the Cisco switch is smart enough that if we don't set it up for security, if we don't set up passwords on it, it's not going to allow people to telnet into it because passwords are required and we haven't set one yet. So thankfully, it's a little more secure than that. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to walk through the configuration of those passwords on a Cisco switch. We'll then talk about why Telnet is bad. Now that we've talked about how to get our switch set up for Telnet, Telnet is not the greatest way to manage your devices. SSH is. SSH is the next version of Telnet, and we'll talk about that as we get into the configuration, into what SSH is all about, how it works, and then how to set it up on our switch. And then finally, we'll talk about setting up port security, which means if somebody plugs into your switch that doesn't belong there, it will kick them out. I'm going to start off right where I left off in the previous video, which is plugged into the console port of this switch. The first thing I want to do to secure this switch is set up some passwords. Now you notice I'm sitting on CBT switch, same config as last time. I need to get into privilege mode, so I'll type in enable. I've now moved to privilege mode. That is the first thing that I want to protect. When you get any Cisco switch out of the box and start configuring it, there are no passwords, so you can move from user mode to privilege mode to whatever you want just by typing in enable and you get right in. So I want to make sure that that mode is protected since privilege mode allows me to do anything I want with this switch. I'll type in configure terminal to move into global config mode, and then I will type in the command to protect privilege mode. Enable password, and then whatever you want your password to be. I'll say Cisco. Worst possible password you could ever use on a Cisco device, but it's good so I don't forget it and lock myself out. So I'll get out of global config mode there, and I'm going to type in disable to move back to user mode. Now watch what happens. I'll type in enable, and now I'm prompted for a password. Now, there are actually two commands to set the privilege mode password. One of them you just saw, enable password. Here is the disadvantage of the enable password. I'm going to type in show running config so I can see what my configuration is currently on my router. And right there in clear text is my enable password. And Bob, who happened to be looking over my shoulder at the time, just went, and walked back to his desk and is now has the keys to my system because he knows my privilege mode password. That way of setting the enable password is actually considered legacy, meaning it's still supported but not used very often. So what I'm going to do is get back into privilege mode and type in the newer command, which is enable secret Cisco. Now, it comes up and says, the enable secret you've chosen is the same as your enable password. This is not recommended. Re-enter the enable secret. Yes, sorry. And the switch is smarter than me at this point because it's saying, well, wait a sec. If you're going to have it in clear text right there, why would you make the enable secret the same thing? So I'll say Cisco 1 is my enable secret password. So I'll jump back out and I'm going to do a show running config one more time. And you can see that right there is enable secret 5 blah, 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 blah. A whole scrambled mishmash, which is actually a very secure form of encryption. It's known as hashing, where that password is virtually unrecoverable. Even if you had this hash right here, it'd be very difficult to figure out what the password was. Now, do you see any problems at all looking at this running config? How about that? The enable password is still there. Well, Cisco is smart enough that when I have both an enable password and an enable secret typed in, they will say, oh, well, you know what? The enable secret supersedes the enable password. So if you were to type in Cisco, you have to trust me here. I'll type in CISCO, enter. It will not work. CISCO, enter. I have to type in Cisco 1 in order for that to operate. So it does automatically disable this. Now you might wonder, well, why on earth Would they even still have that command? Why do they leave that in the running config or even support that command anymore? Well, the reason why is because a lot of people configure Cisco routers in a very fast way. Meaning, they'll create these base configurations, Cisco routers or switches, we're talking about switches right now, and they'll say, okay, here's all the commands that I want to put into my switch to make it work. You know, down, down, down we would go. And I'll stop that output. What they would then do is take all of this, starting from that first exclamation point, copy it, click on it, go edit, copy, then open the ultra sophisticated application, got to be certified to use this one, Notepad, and paste it in. Paste. So now you actually have a backup and a base configuration that you could use. Now you can take this to any device that you want. As a matter of fact, let me show you. We'll go to edit, copy, move into global configuration on whatever switch you want to, and just say, I want to paste that in. And you can actually configure switches on the fly like that, because that running configuration that I showed you in the last video is actually every command that you typed into that switch. So the great thing is if you ever, accidentally blow up your switch, you can just erase the configuration and then paste it all back in. Now, with all that in mind, come back to the original question with me. Why do they still have this command? Well, on Cisco devices, there are some iOS versions that are older that don't support this one. Meaning the enable secret is a little bit newer command. So if you're on a very old device and you paste the configuration in there, it'll paste both things in, but you're guaranteed that it will at least take the enable password, even if the iOS that you're working with doesn't support the enable secret anymore. So that's a long answer to a short question as to why they have that command. Now I'll tell you, with that being said, most people don't use the enable password, so I like removing it from the config by typing, remember, anything with no in front is negating. So I'll type in no enable password. Gone. Now when I do a show run, I can see that there's the enable secret and the enable password is now gone. So that protects the privilege mode. And I'm going to type in enable secret Cisco one more time. One side note, I was working with somebody who was continually locking themselves out of the switch, and I found out that they were actually typing in enable secret password Cisco. Now if you do that, what do you think your password is? It's password space Cisco. That's your password. The command is just enable secret. Whatever you type after that is your password. One other note on this, a common mistake I've made, you'll get used to using the question mark, to walk yourself through the command. It'll say, oh, well, type in your password here. So I type in Cisco, you do space question mark, and it says, oh, nope, you're done. You're typing in the line, and you hit enter right there. Now, if you hit enter, your password at this point will be Cisco space. The spaces count as passwords. Yikes. So a lot of times, if you're used to hitting the question mark, make sure you backspace before you hit the enter key and save your enable secret. All right. That is protecting the privilege mode. Now let's talk about the other passwords that we can set on the switch. The first, to protect the console port. I don't know if you noticed, but when I got into this switch, it said press return to get started, and I hit enter, and there I am. I'm in user mode. So I want to protect even that transition into user mode, and the way I do that is by assigning a password to the console port. I'll type in line console 0 and hit the enter key. I'm now under the line configuration mode. Anything that I type from here affects just the console port. So the first thing I'm going to type is password, and then whatever I want my password to be. We'll say Cisco in this case. Now, that assigns a password to the console port, but the catch is the Cisco switch doesn't know that I need to even ask for that password. So I need to follow it up with one more command, and that is login. Login requires logins to the console port. So once I've typed in login followed by password Cisco, or vice versa, you can type these commands in whatever order you want. It now knows to prompt people for the login, and the password to login will be Cisco. So let's test it out. I get out, press return to get started, I hit enter, and the first thing it asks for right there is the password. I type in Cisco, I'm in user mode. Enable Cisco, I'm in privilege mode, and now I'm back to where I started. So that is assigning a password to the console port. Now let's move forward one more step with what I started this whole video with. I said we need to protect our telnet ports, or at least assign them a password. Now, let me show you that again, because I kind of flew by it, but I want you to catch a big tip that it's giving you in the message. I'm going to type in telnet 172.30.2.180, which is my switch's IP address. Or is it? Oh, there it goes. Okay. I was like, did I forget it? It says password required, but none set. Let me show you why it's giving us that message. I'm going to type in show running config. See if you can follow this. I'm going to scroll down. You see enable secret. That's there. Space, space. I'm scrolling through all my ports. Yep, yep, yep. That's all there. Great. There's my VLAN 1 interface and the IP address we assigned in the previous video. Now, here we are. At the bottom of the config, it shows line console 0, password Cisco. We've typed that in already. Now, line VTY 0 space 4. Now, we haven't talked about it yet, but that represents your Telnet ports. I'll talk about why in just a moment, but follow me for a second. Under the Telnet ports, it says login. Login requires a login. That's what I said when we added that command to the console port. And notice the message that we got when we tried to Telnet. It says password required. How about we rephrase that? Login required, but none set. You see it? Login is right there under the VTY ports. One more thing I want to show you, and then I'll fully explain everything. See, I get on these tangents and I can't stop myself. I'm going to type in line VTY 0 space 4. What do you think happens if I type in no login? No login to VTY 0 space 4. Let's test it and find out. I'm going to hit the up arrow. Look, I almost choked myself there. Type telnet 172.32.180. Hit enter. Holy cow. Look at that. I'm sitting on CBT switch. It's almost as if no login was required. Did you put the pieces together? A lot of people think, oh, if I type no login, that must mean no logins are allowed. But remember, the no command isn't reasonable, logical, I guess, is your mind it's thinking. No negates anything that you put after it. So it's saying no login is required anymore, and people can telnet right in. That is the most horrible command you could ever type in under your switch. I'm going to stop that right now. Look what it says when I do that. It says login disabled until a password is set. You're seeing how these pieces fit. All right. Let me jump back here. Let me catch up. What's a VTY port? Let's go there. I've been typing in line VTY 0 space 4. Well, a VTY port, it stands for virtual terminal. It actually comes from the days of old when they had these virtual terminal ports that you would access to access a device remotely. They said it was like virtually being on that device by sitting in front of it, like being connected to the console port. So our VTY ports are actually the ports that accept telnet sessions. So I can type in line VTY space question mark, and it says, what is your first line number? I'll put 0, since that's the very first one. You know, numbering always starts from 0, so that's my first one. I hit the question mark, and it says, what is your last line number? Looking at that, I can tell you that this Cisco switch can support up to 16 telnet sessions all at the same time, meaning 16 different people can be telnetted into this switch all at the same time, all making their own changes if they wanted to. Now, that's a lot of people. Cisco gives you the flexibility to do that. But you might say, well, I only want 2 people on there at a time. In that case, I would just configure line VTY 0 and 1. 0 through 1, you can think of it as. And anything that I type right now will affect both VTY 0 and VTY 1. So I could type in login to require logins. It says login will be disabled until you set a password. And I'll type in password Cisco. Enter. Now when I jump back and do a show running config, scroll down to the bottom of that. While that's scrolling, I'm going to slide this over here and kill my current telnet session to the switch where I was testing it before. Scroll down to the bottom, and I can see that I have line VTY 0 space 1, where it says the password that's required is Cisco, and logins are required, so I'll be prompted for login. Notice line 2 through 4 and 5 through 15. Cisco just breaks it into different groups. Most people configure line VTY 0 space 4 because that's just what a lot of people do. Cisco used to only support 5 telnet sessions maximum, so they always had this line VTY 04 that people would configure. But now they support much more. You can go up to 16, at least on this switch. So you can see it's broken those apart. Line VTY 0 and 1 are given the password of Cisco, and that's assigned. Line VTY 2 through 4 and 5 through 15 have a login required and no password set. So what that tells me is if more than 2 people try and telnet in at the same time, they will run into these VTY lines and they'll get that no password required or password required 1 set. So let's test our config. I'm going to try and telnet in one more time. Ah, that's better. Type in my password of Cisco, CBT switch, privilege mode, Cisco. I'm now able to remotely manage that switch. So you know what? Let's do that. You'll find out that remote management is much faster than using the console port. You remember looking at the show run previously, right? I type in show run now. It's kind of like, choo, you know, flies right by because the console port runs at a very low speed. So I can see the scrolling much faster. Okay. What am I talking about? Passwords. We've got the console password set. We've got the VTY password set. We've got the enable password set. One more command on the password side I want to show you, and that is to fix this. You notice it shows the console password is Cisco. The VTY password is Cisco. Again, Bob looking over your shoulder is like, ah, great. I now at least have the user mode password, and I can remember that. So Cisco introduced a command. Go into global config mode. I'll type in what am I typing? Service password dash encryption. What that will do is with one command, you can encrypt every single password on your Cisco router. Let me go back and do a show run, and I'll scroll down, space, 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 down to the bottom. And you look right there, line console 0, password 7, blah, blah, blah. It's been encrypted. Same thing here, blah, it's encrypted. So you now have encrypted those passwords where it at least eliminates the clear view. Now, the other piece I want to mention on that encryption is I don't want you to get a false sense of security. You're thinking, oh, it's encrypted. That means people can't get it, right? Well, I want you to notice that this is, notice it says password 7, blah, blah, blah. Password 7, blah, blah. That is considered level 7 encryption. Check this out. I'm going to open a web browser. This is Firefox, and I'm just going to go to Google, and I'm going to type in break Cisco password. Right there. Number 1 hit on there, Cisco password cracker. Let's click on it. And it says, this is, you know, ever had a level 7 Cisco password that you wanted to crack? You know, like things like this. And I scroll down and wow, they have a convenient box. Let's try it. I'm going to jump back over here, highlight it, and do a copy. Jump over here and do a Control V, which is paste. And I'll hit crack password. Nice. We've got the plain text password right there for us to see. So level 7 or type 7 encryption is not strong at all. I mean, they obviously, well, what I love this. What's the moral of the story? Don't do it. Use the enable secret and things like that. Now, there are some times like you can't get by level 7 encryption. You have to use it for the console port and VTY lines. The reason Cisco has it, and they chose to use level 7 encryption, is it doesn't add as much processor overhead as type 5 encryption. This is considered MD5 hashing, by the way, for enable secret. You can't break that. At least not easily. So that one is considered much more secure, but much more costly on the overhead. So they chose to go with the weaker one here. What that does is eliminate the line of sight, meaning it's much tougher to remember that than it is to remember Cisco if you were to see it. So it eliminates the line of sight remembering of passwords, but keep in mind, don't email your configuration to people because this is easily broken. All right, so we've got our passwords, check. The second thing I want to show you is setting up logon banners. There is a story of woe that I've heard many times. I've never actually heard the court case, so it could be a myth, but it sure sounds true. There were a group of college students that hacked into a university server and literally annihilated it. A lot of data was lost, user directories were deleted. It was just a crisis. They caught these guys and took them to court and said, these people, violated this, that, and the other. They are, banned from campus. They're kicked out of school. They need to go to jail, that sort of thing. And the students ended up winning the case because they said, well, we accessed the network and it said, welcome. So that, in the good old United States courts of law, is good enough for a lawyer to say, well, it said welcome technically, da da da, fill in the blank, and before long you have somebody who gets away with just about anything if you say welcome. So you will never see devices say welcome any longer, yeah, unless maybe after you log in. And in the same way on Cisco devices, there is no logon banners by default. I don't know if you noticed, but um, let's see, when I connected, my scroll back doesn't show. When I connected, it just said you are now logged in. So what we want to do is go into global configuration mode and use the banner command. And I'm going to hit question mark. There are many different banners that you can create for many different purposes. Uh, like incoming. Well, I don't even want to get into a lot of these, but I'll just say the banner that you want to set is actually either login or message of the day. They both essentially do the same thing. It's just that login is only displayed when you connect to VTY lines. When you're logging into the router, right before you type in your username and password, that shows up. Message of the day shows up no matter how you connect to the router. It could be through the console port, it could be telnetting. No matter how you get there, message of the day shows up. If you put both banners in, the message of the day comes up, what was that, first or second? I believe it's first. And then the login banner comes in second. It will be displayed after the message of the day. So you can make any combination. What I would say and what I do is I always use the message of the day. So I'll type in MOTD, banner MOTD, and I'll hit question mark. Gotta love this. It says line, C banner text C, where C is the delimiting character. Right. You might remember from the previous video when we did the clock, anytime you see anything in all capitals, that means you just need to type something there. Fill that in. So it's saying type in a line, and the line should look like C banner text C, where C is the delimiting character. What it's trying to say is you need to start your logon banner with some symbol and end your logon banner with some symbol. What that symbol is totally up to you. So for example, I might decide to use a left bracket, enter. And it says, okay, go ahead and enter your text message, end with the character left bracket. So I'll type in, maybe just a row of stars, do not log on. Another row of stars. I'm kind of in this little text editor. Now, actually, before I go on, I'll hit enter a couple times on that. Before I go any further, there are some people that I've seen logon banners that literally take multiple scrolls to get by. They have like internet acceptable use policies, email policies, everything in like this legal disclaimer that they have. That is not necessary for a Cisco device. You just need something that legally covers you, something like unauthorized access is prohibited, da 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 da. Fill one or two sentences and that's it. The reason I mention that is if you put in a massive logon banner, it just will start taking forever anytime you want to save your configuration, like 30-second wait times for your config to save, which you don't want that. So just keep it short and sweet. And the same thing goes, I don't know if you've heard of ASCII art. It's kind of funny. It's a way to draw pictures using slashes and so on, and you can go on the web and you can actually upload pictures and it'll convert it to ASCII art for you. So people have these little, devils on their logon banner or whatever else they have there, just to be funny. But again, you're doing the same thing. You're just going to make it take forever to save your config. So I'm in this little text editor. I typed in my logon banner. I need to finish it, and the way that I do that is just put my symbol in. Enter. The symbol that I started it with, right there, needs to be the symbol that I end it with. That's what it means when it says C banner text C. Now, I hit enter after I typed that symbol, and it took me into this little text editor, which I like. You can also do the same thing. I could type in banner MOTD, I'll use a plus sign this time and say, do not log on, plus sign. And that will do the same thing. Anything between the plus signs will be a logon banner. So either way is just as valid. The text editor gives you a little more flexibility. So I'm going to exit out. I'm now, oh, I was telnetted. So I'll telnet to the device. Notice there is now my logon banner, and it's asking me for my VTY password. I'm in. Good. So we've got our password set. We've got our logon banner set. The last thing I think I'm going to do in this video is show you how to turn on SSH. I was planning on showing you port security, but just based on the amount of time, I want to make sure I've got plenty of time to show that and demonstrate it because it's a very cool feature. So I think I'm going to bump that one to the next video. So what we've been doing, let's see, we've been telnetting to this device, and we've been accessing it via telnet session, but telnet is one of the worst protocols you can possibly use. The reason why is it is clear text, meaning if you have a packet sniffer, you know what? Let me show this to you. Hang on, I'm going to pause the recording. I paused the recording because I do have a packet sniffer, and you can too. They're free. This one's called Wireshark. It's one of the most popular ones. It used to be called Ethereal, but this is just a program that you can use to capture data that's coming to and from your PC or just to and from the network, depends on how you set it up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on Capture Interfaces. This is going to be actually very educational. And it's kind of moving to the front. There we go. I can see all the interfaces that my computer has. This is the one that's actually active, my Intel card right now. So it's showing how many packets have been sent and received. I'm going to click on Start. So it's starting a capture from that interface. So I'm on this CBT switch. I'm going to type in config T, enable secret Cisco, you know, a couple things right there. All right. Let's bring this back up, and I'll say capture, stop. Right there. This is capturing all of the data to and from my computer. Now, looking at packets when I first got into this, I was like, boring, hello. Now I'm like, I can't think of a better thing to do on a Friday night. Just grab this packet sniffer and go to town checking out packets. And you can see right here, it's capturing packets, and it notifies me that this is the protocol of Telnet. And I can see, you know, some TCP stuff. It looks like in the background, my computer has a web browser connection of some sort open, and I'm just looking at my, yep, it does. So there's, you know, it's capturing some web traffic, but down here, it's showing, you know, packet captured from, you can see the source address 172.32.50 to 172.230.2.180. Now, if I were to, let's see, if I would go to follow TCP stream, we'll actually, look at that, reassemble every single thing that I typed in. Now, yeah, it looks a little unconventional. You can see CCOONNFFTT. That's config T or conf T that I typed in for short. Now, the reason that it has double of every character, one for red, one for blue, is because one of them is send and one of them is receive. This one right here, you can see is coming 172.32.180 telnet to me. This is from the switch to me. It gave me all of this information. It actually echoes every single thing that I type, and that's why I'm able to see what I'm typing. Every single time I type a character like that, it's echoing. The switch is echoing it back to me, and that's why I can see it on the screen. If it didn't echo it to me, I wouldn't see. For example, let me exit back out. Oh, let me show you this. No, I won't. You'll believe me. I'll type in telnet. See that right there? It's not echoing what I type, and that's how it hides the password that I'm typing in, so it doesn't look like I'm typing in anything. But every other thing that I type is echoed back. That's why we see the double type every single when you look at the entire conversation. But I'm getting into semantics. Hello, more important, somebody can just grab a packet sniffer and say, yeah, I see exactly what you're typing in, including passwords. So Telnet is bad because it is wide open for anybody to see. They can just go inside of here and grab some data. Now, likewise, I know this isn't the place for it, but I have to show this to you. Every single time you use a packet sniffer, you can see every single layer of the OSI model. This is layer 1. This is layer 2. You can actually see Ethernet 2, and at layer 2, remember, is data link addresses. It shows in the layer 2 header, the data link header, we have this destination MAC address, that's to my switch. This is the source MAC address. It recognizes my Intel card that it comes from and shows everything about it. Minimize that. Right here is the network layer header. I can see a lot of stuff, mainly source and destination IP address. Shows where it's coming from and where it's going to. Can scroll down and see all of that breakdown down here. There's a lot of other stuff inside of the header where you can see a lot of info, and I'm not going to delve way into this, but packet sniffers, I'm telling you, they're the bomb. You can see everything. There's TCP, that's layer 4, Transmission Control Protocol, or TCP. You can see the source port the data came from, the destination port it's going to, your sequence number, your acknowledgement number. Oh, this is awesome. Awesome stuff. And then right here, okay, I'll stop. That's a packet sniffer. My point in all of this is Telnet is bad. Now, I guess you can see why I need multiple videos to explain port security. Just wait until I get into that. So Telnet is bad because everything is clear text. So what a protocol is that we can use instead is SSH. SSH stands for Secure Shell. It is essentially Telnet with encryption. It allows you to encrypt data. Now, to get into everything about SSH, it would take a lot. So I'm just going to give you the basics on how to set it up. The first thing that you'll need is a username and password, because in order to Telnet, it just requires a password. SSH also requires a username. That's part of the requirements. So I go to global configuration mode and I type in username, and I'll just say Jeremy, password Cisco. Done. I've created a user account on this switch for myself. The second thing I need to do is to assign a domain name. Now, when you think of domain name, think of it just like a web address. When you type in cisco.com, that is a domain name. cbtnuggets.com, that sort of thing. So we need to put a domain name on here because the domain name is used to generate encryption certificates. And this is where I will bank on that statement I said, that there's a lot more to SSH than what I'm going to talk about here. In order to generate a certificate, it just has to know where it is. So it can say this certificate belongs to, and I'll put cbtnuggets.com. So it will say this certificate belongs to cbtswitch.cbtnuggets.com. Every encryption certificate, which is what SSH uses to encrypt data, is assigned to somebody. So we have to have that in there. Now we need to generate our keys. And this is one of those areas where the help will give you a lot of information, but one of those areas where it's best just to memorize these commands, frankly. So I type in crypto key generate, and I'm hitting question mark as I go, RSA, that's what kind of key I want to generate. So I'll say RSA keys and then hit question mark, and it says, do you want, general keys, storage, usage keys, and so on. You can type that, but it'll walk you through it if you hit enter. You notice it says enter. Now it says, what size of key modulus would you like to use? This is essentially asking, how strong of an encryption algorithm do you want? The stronger it is, of course, the harder it is to break, but the more processor time it's going to use to generate that key. And also, anytime somebody SSH'd into your device and accesses it remotely, it's going to cost more processor cycles to do the encryption. 512-bit modulus is pretty good, and that's the default. I usually go for 1024. That's just a standard strong encryption key size. Hit enter. It says, I'm generating your keys. They will be non-exportable, meaning you can't use them on other devices. Okay, so we've got our keys generated. Now we need to type in what version of SSH we want to use. I'll put IPSSH version 2. That is the standard for what it is. Now, I feel like I'm just saying, this is the command, and I am. Because there is a lot more to SSH, but it's covered in the security track for Cisco, where they get into in-depth what all these commands mean. This is just turning on SSH. So the last thing I need to do is get back under those telnet ports, line VTY0 space 4, and instead of saying telnet is allowed, I need to say transport input, and then instead of telnet, I'm going to say SSH. By default, it's going to say transport input telnet. That's what's in there by default. So by saying transport input SSH, that says telnet is denied, SSH is the only thing that's allowed. If I want to allow both of them, I can type in transport input telnet and SSH. That will allow both protocols to get into this device. All right. So what I've got there is I've got SSH turned on. I've got telnet enabled that I can telnet or SSH. This switch is now ready. Now all I have to do is use a program that supports SSH, like TerraTerm. I just opened up a new window behind the scenes. And I'll say I would like to SSH instead of telnet to a device. And it was 172.30.2.180. Dope. Never mind. Don't use TerraTerm. It doesn't support SSH version 2, which is now the standard. You'll probably want to use something like Secure CRT or one of the higher end programs that supports the new SSH version. But that is all it takes to enable SSH. Then every single thing that you do when you're communicating with the switch will be encrypted. Okay, I couldn't just leave it at that. I had to download the new version of TerraTerm, or the newer version, that supports the SSH version 2. So let's try it again. New connection. I'll say TCP/IP, we'll use SSH, and we'll do 172.30.2.180, which is my switch, and hit enter. And the very first time you connect to a device, it will sometimes take a while because it's exchanging the keys. It says, who do you want to log in as? That's that user account I created, Jeremy. What is this password? Cisco. I hit enter, and sure enough, there's my logon banner, there's my user mode, and I am now using SSH. So let's, how can you make this any better? Let's top it off. Let's do a packet capture again. I'll say capture interface, and we'll start on that interface. It says, do you want to erase your previous capture? I'll say yes, continue without saving. So it's capturing packets now. Let me go back here, and I'm going to type in, hello, my name is. And then flip back over and hit capture, stop. Right. Oh, I need to clear my filter. I was filtering for the telnet from previously. But right here you can see the information that's going between the different devices. Let me scroll down. There we go. There's the SSH. Now you can see the actual SSH stream. I'll do analyze, see if we can follow that TCP stream. Much better, eh? Instead of actually saying, hello, my name is, we see just scrambled mishmash that's sent between those two devices. Everything is encrypted using the SSH protocol. So you can see every piece of information that I communicate with S-Switch is hidden. That's why SSH is so much better. And that is the beginning of configuring Cisco switch security. We only made it through 2 bullet points, and that's okay. We spent a good amount of time understanding and configuring all the passwords on the switch. We even did the logon banner, and we went into understanding SSH, the encrypted version of Telnet. I'm going to bump, as I mentioned, setting up port security to the next video in order that I can spend adequate time talking about that. So for now, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for